I can see the names appearing in the chat. We've seen you over a period of 4 weeks now, and it's wonderful that you've joined us again this morning. It is indeed on the last day of half term before the Eisteddfod. It's a busy time of the year, clearly. Now, talking about company, Anne, we're joined by a very special group today because there is one school that's been participating in the project, and they're in the Senedd itself, and that is Victoria County Primary School from Wrexham. Can we see them? Victoria School available in the Senedd, so we can say good morning to them? We did get a glimpse of them earlier, I think. I think they were waving at us. Yes, you're quite right. Ah, there they are. Good morning, Ysgol Victoria. They happen to be on a trip to Cardiff at the moment, and it's wonderful to see you this morning. Perhaps we'll return to Victoria County Primary School at the end of the session to hear live from the Senedd, but we'll see. So thank you. Good morning, Ysgol Victoria. We'll see you later. But I'm going to hand over to you now, Anne, for a few slides, because we're here this morning to hold our first primary plenary session, as it were, in order to understand how plenary works in the Senedd itself. So could you just explain how a plenary session would usually work in the Senedd? Well, it's very exciting that we will have our first primary plenary with so many schools joining us from all corners of Wales. Now, on this slide, I'm sure these pictures will be familiar to you, and it'll help us to remember what we've been looking at during the past few weeks. And you remember seeing a picture of the chamber, which is at the heart of the Senedd. And this is where all the debate and discussion happens as members make decisions about the future of Wales on those issues that the Senedd is responsible for. So as we can see here, plenary happens every Tuesday and Wednesday afternoon. So after playtime or lunchtime for you on a Tuesday and Wednesday, a bell might ring for you to go back to your classroom. Well, the same happens in the Senedd. The bell is rung and Senedd members enter the chamber and take their seats. Do you remember how many Senedd members there are? Do you remember who? Now then, I've got two numbers in my mind because I think the number's going to change soon. I think at the moment there are 60 members, aren't there? You're absolutely right. Yes, there are 60 members at the moment. And at the moment too, there is a lot of work happening in the Senedd chamber to make it a little bigger. There will be more members as a result of the next election, and we will go up to 96 members after the election, which is almost a year ago in May of next year. But what we also see on this slide, and perhaps you'll remember some of these faces, we have Elin Jones. She is a member of the Senedd, but she is also the llywydd, or the presiding officer. So she keeps order, very much like a chair in the school council. She makes sure that everything is done fairly within the chamber and everyone has a fair opportunity to participate in a debate or a conversation and to ask questions. And then we see Eluned Morgan. Again, we've mentioned her during previous sessions. Hugh, do you remember what Eluned Morgan's role is? I think she's the First Minister, isn't she? That's absolutely right, yes. If you remember, we discussed some of the different political parties, the Labour Party, Plaid Cymru, the Liberal Democrats, and the Conservatives. Eluned Morgan leads the Labour government, and they had the largest number of members. On a Tuesday and Wednesday, there is an opportunity at the beginning of every meeting for all Senedd members to ask questions of the Welsh Government. So they'll ask questions about policies and decisions taken by the government. So it's a very good opportunity for them to scrutinise and to ensure that the best decisions are made for the future of Wales. So that's a very important role for every Senedd members. They do question the government and ensure that the best choices are made. But let's move on to our next slide. Now, in addition to asking questions at the beginning of the meeting, another important part of the debating role in the Senedd is to introduce new ideas and to discuss what laws will be passed for the future of Wales. So Senedd members do have an opportunity to raise issues that are important to the people that they represent in all parts of Wales. And this is very similar to what we'll hear during the rest of this session. Some of you will be providing your own ideas. You will have been discussing this in your classrooms and you've been coming up with ideas as to what you think would be best in terms of introducing a new law or a new policy. So this is a hugely important role. And we've seen a lot of laws passed and we've discussed them during previous sessions. Hugh, do you remember some of the examples of the laws passed by the Senedd? Well, the one that comes to mind is the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. Well, yes, there's been a great deal of discussion on that, and there was a lot of discussion in the Senedd chamber, and it's still being discussed. And a number of other laws have been passed too, free school meals, the plastic bag charge. There are all sorts of different topics that you've been discussing in your classrooms, the environment and how to keep us healthy. Now, if you look very carefully, you will see in that picture, we can see the computers that the members have in the chamber, but there are also small buttons there. There's a red button and a green button. So when the debates have been had and everyone's had an opportunity to express their views for or against particular ideas in order to pass a law, now clearly the 60 members do have to vote. So they use those buttons, green for yes, I agree, and red for no, I disagree with this idea. And there'll be an opportunity for you to do that during this session. You won't have buttons like they have in the chamber, but if memory serves me correctly here, there will be an opportunity to use Menti, and I think there might be some Kahoot going on too. So I'll hand you back to Hugh now so he can explain what the next steps are and how things will work. Yes, we're quite ambitious this morning with our voting system. So we're going to add a practice issue. So don't worry if not everything is in place for this test run. You will know how things work when we actually move on to the real issues. But what exactly do you need? Well, we've placed this in the chat in case you want to refer back to that, but you will need two devices, one for the class to take part in opinion polls, and we will hold the opinion polls through Menti. Now, that perhaps is better controlled by the teacher because the teacher might want to ask the class what their views are. Are they for or against? Some will be in favour, some may be against. And then the teacher will have to count which is favoured by the class, for or against, and then enter that vote into Menti on behalf of the class. And then we'll go over to Kahoot in order to see if the primary Senedd member representing the class or their constituency, if you like, by voting in accordance with what their class suggests is the best way forward. So we'll just have a test run now. And we'll go to Menti. And if you haven't seen in the chat, this is how you join the Menti. Don't worry if you don't get there in time. This QR code will appear on every scheme, and the joining code will also be available, so don't worry if you don't get straight on. But as a test run, we're going to ask, is playtime a good thing? Are you in favour or are you against that? And I have a fair idea of how this opinion poll will go. As we can see, there are more in favour than there are against, at the moment at least. And there you go. I can see that a large number of you have joined the Menti. And I think we all understand how it works. So we will see some Senedd members joining the Kahoot now. And again, the joining instructions are in the chat at the very top. And perhaps I'll ask my colleague Siwan to repost those messages in a few moments' time so that they're available at the bottom of the chat too. And then I hope that those joining are our Senedd members from every class. And we will see if they agree with the opinion poll. So once again, if you're not there in time, don't worry, this code will be available during the session. So are you going to agree with our opinion poll? Let's see. Playtime is a good thing. So it's exactly the same question. Is the vote going to go in the same direction as the opinion poll? I have a feeling that it might. Well, yes, of course, 82% voted that playtime is a good thing. So that's how things will work. Okay, we're going to return now for our first topic of discussion, and this comes from a Senedd member from St Patrick's RC Primary in Cardiff, and this relates to sport. Let's hear it.
Hi, my name is Gianni from St Patrick's Primary School, and we would like to implement more coaches to teach specific sports.
So that's an interesting one, isn't it? More coaches for particular sports. So a football coach for football, a rugby coach for rugby in primary schools. So what we'll do now is to give you 30 seconds in order to have a discussion in your classroom to see whether the class is in favour or against. So away we go with that 30 seconds. Do you agree that we need particular coaches for particular sports? So this is an opportunity for you to vote in your classrooms. You can put your hands up if you're in favour first, and those against can put their hands up afterwards. A dyna ni, y 30 eiliad ar ben. That's the 30 seconds done, so I'm going to go back to the Menti. And here we are. Are you in favour or against as a class? There should be coaches for specific sports in primary schools. And the responses are coming in. I see that 7 of 66 have now voted. And we'll put 30 seconds on the clock again as the results come in. So what do you think, Anne, as the First Minister of this meeting? Well, I've been promoted this morning here, haven't I? For the next half an hour at least, yes. Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I'm very aware in terms of my own children, perhaps not so much in school, but in the community, how much work is done with sports clubs, and they often rely on volunteers. So I think this would be a very good idea to have these skills working in the school, and perhaps they could arrange after school clubs too. I think that would be a wonderful idea. Well, perhaps we should see what our classes think. Do they agree? Generally speaking, yes. 49 are in favour with 12 against. So some might not like sport as much as others, but I wonder then if the Senedd members will agree with their classes. Are they going to represent their classes in the same way? There should be coaches for specific sports. So this is for the Senedd members. Are you for or against? And I'll give you another 5 seconds to respond here. So 90 in favour in terms of the Senedd members. So that idea would have passed within the Senedd, wouldn't it, Anne? It would indeed. If over half the members agree, then that law could be passed. Well, the voting is working very well. That's very good to see. Well, we had a good proposal from Cardiff this morning, so thank you very much to the Senedd member from St Patrick's. So now we move to Mid Wales to hear from a Senedd member from Rhaeadr Primary School, and this relates to the environment. My name is Fion, and I'm here to represent Ysgol Gynradd Rhaeadr. We've been looking at how to help the environment, and our idea is to establish a bilingual club to help to tackle issues. One idea is to establish a club to pick up litter around the school and in the community. Thank you. So that's a very conscientious school, and Senedd members, a wonderful thing in terms of the environment. They obviously want to look after the environment in the Rhaeadr area. So it's actually the same process now. We'll give you 30 seconds to consider this as a class before we move on to the votes and the opinion polls. So this is an opportunity for you to have an informal vote in your classrooms. I hope there's some discussion of this in the Senedd, Anne. Well, the environment is a very important issue, and we're fortunate in Wales. Much of our legislation is groundbreaking, and countries around the world are looking at what's happening in terms of recycling and so on. And I really think that Fion's idea was presented wonderfully. Thank you, Fion. Well, there was some background provided to the idea there, wasn't there? So let's see whether our classes agree. We've had a number join on the opinion poll now. And we'll give everyone another 10 seconds to respond. We've got almost 50 replies now, and we're just going to wait a few seconds just to ensure that everyone has time to take their own view rather than being steered by the vote that's already been taken. When we get to 60 votes, perhaps we can show the result. Okay, I think it's time for us to have a look. Well, a very good proposal once again from Rhaeadr. 53 in favour and 15 against. So I wonder if the Senedd members will listen to that view when it comes to the official vote. Schools should start rubbish collection clubs. Over to the Senedd members now. Will you vote in favour or against?
Ydyn wir 107 o aelodau
Indeed,
Senedd yn debyg yn
107
pleidleisio o blaid.
voted in
Felly unwaith
favour.
eto gosodiad
So once again,
cadarnhaol iawn
a
arall
very
pawb yn
positive
gefnogol
proposal,
iawn o
and
syniadau
there's a
i glyd
great
bore 'ma
deal of
sydd yn wych
support
i weld.
for
Felly da
these
iawn i
ideas
chi.
this morning. So
Diolch
it's
yn fawr
great
iawn
to
ag
see.
aelod Senedd
And thank you
o
very
Rhaeadr
much
yn
to
fan'na.
the Senedd member from
Rwan, da ni'n mynd i
Rhaeadr
symud
there.
ymlaen at y
And now
trydydd
we'll move to
gosodiad sydd yn
our
ymwneud
third
â
proposal,
addysg.
which relates
Trydydd
to
mater fel petai. Ma' hwn yn
education.
mynd
So
diddorol
this
iawn. Dwi'n
third issue,
gobeithio
and this
gadewch
is
chi
a very
glywed.
interesting one, so let's hear.
Hi, my name's Eddie, and I'm from Narberth CB School in Wales. And we have been discussing about the price of school trips and the transport together. We believe that the government should pay for at least one trip every school year to take the pressure off parents paying for getting the money to pay for them. School trips also help for children's mental health, education, and real life experiences. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a great day. Diolch, hwyl fawr.
So dyna chi fater diddorol, Ann.
Well, that's
Mae'n
an
debyg bod
interesting issue,
rhywbeth
isn't
tebyg
it,
wedi
Anne?
cael ei drafod yn ddiweddar yn y
I think
Senedd,
a
yndi?
similar thing was discussed recently in the Senedd. Well, yes, this has been a topic for discussion over the past year or two. One Senedd member did raise the issue in relation to visits to outdoor pursuit centres. And I think Eddie there presented the idea wonderfully and provided the reasons, discussing mental health and also the cost, but also how important it is to get experiences outside the classroom. I think he made the case wonderfully. But what can be difficult, of course, when we do have discussions in the Senedd is how much money is available for all of these things. There are so many different responsibilities, but I do think that Eddie made some very strong arguments there, and it'll be interesting to see what the result of the vote will be. And it was very professionally done too. That was wonderful, Eddie, as Senedd member for Narberth School. So let's see, we'll move on and give you 30 seconds once again so that you can consider how you'd like to vote.
Tybed o ble fydde arian yn dod. Dwi'n
I
siŵr
wonder
os
where the
fydde'r
funding
arian
would
ar
come
gael,
from. I think if
fydde pawb
the
yn
money was
gefnogol iawn,
available,
ar
everyone would be
gyfer y syniad
supportive
yma yn bydden.
of this idea, I'm sure.
Felly, 5 eiliad bach ar ôl eto i
So there's
drafod
5
dosbarth
seconds
a
left,
chreu
so you
gyda ryw
can
math o
discuss it
bleidlais
in
anffurfiol.
your classroom and have an informal
Dyna ni
vote,
symud
perhaps.
yn ôl at y
And
menti,
we'll move
mwyn
back to
gweld
the
beth ydy'r
Menti
syniadau chi.
to see
Dylai'r
what your
Llywodraeth
ideas
dalu
are.
am
The
un
government
trip
should
I
pay
can
for
ysgol
see the
one
names
school
appearing
trip
in the chat.
every
Mae'r
year,
atebion yn dechrau cyrraedd yn
and the
barod. Felly,
responses are
dylwn ni
already
adael y
coming in.
rhif mae dyfu ryw chydig eto
So we'll watch
cyn
the number
ymddangos
go up before
sut
we
mae
show
pawb
the
yn
result
pleidleisio.
of the vote.
100% o'r matebion wedi'n
We've
cyfrydnu.
had 50 responses.
A 60. Felly dwi'n
We're
meddwl
now
gan
up
mai
to
60
60.
o aelodau Senedd
Well,
sydd
as
yn
there
y
are
Senedd ar hyn o bryd, dylwn ni
60
ddefnyddio hwnnw fel
Senedd
ffigwr
members, I'll
er
use
mwyn
that
arddangos
as
y
the figure
pleidleisiau.
where we'll display the
A
result.
mae hon yn un
Well,
ffafriol iawn. Mae'n debyg
this
65 yn
is
pleidleisio o
very
blaid a
popular,
7 dosbarth
65 in
unig
favour
yn
and
erbyn y
7
syniad.
against.
Dwi'n tybed os ydy'r
So
aelodau Senedd
I
yn mynd i
wonder if the
bleidleisio yn yr
Senedd
un modd.
members will vote
Dylai'r
in the
Llywodraeth
same
dalu
way.
am un
The
trip ysgol
government should
pob
pay for
blwyddyn.
one school trip every year.
O blaid neu yn erbyn. A
Are you in
wedi'r
favour
mater
or
yma, dwi'n
against?
gobeithio bod ni'n
And
mynd i
once
fynd yn
we've
fyw
concluded on
i'r
this issue, I
Senedd ei
hope we
hun
can go live
mwyn
to the
clywed
Senedd
mater gan
to
Ysgol
hear
Victoria
from
sydd digwydd bod ar trip
Victoria
yn
School,
Caerdydd
who
ar hyn o
happen
bryd,
to
ond
be
cawn
on a
ni
trip
gweld
in
os mae'r
Cardiff at the
dechnoleg yn
moment, but
gweithio.
we'll
Ond
see if
unwaith
the
eto,
technology
pawb yn
works.
gefnogol iawn,
But
unwaith
once
eto
again, there's a
o'r
great deal of
mater mae
support
124
for this
ohonoch chi'n
proposal,
pleidleisio o blaid.
124 of you voting in favour
Gosodiad Eddie fanna ynglyn â tripiau
of
ysgol
Eddie's
Cardydd.
proposal for
Reit te,
3 school
nôl
trips.
rwan at y sleidiau.
Okay, we'll return
A
to
fel
our
dwi'n dweud, dwi'n mynd i
slides.
fynd
And as I
gobeithio. Mae
say,
yna
I
ddau
hope
leoliad ar y map fel y gwelwch chi fan hyn.
there are
Un yng
2
Nghaerdydd
locations on the map,
oherwydd
one
bod
in
Ysgol
Cardiff,
Victoria sydd yn Wrecsam fel
because
arfer
Victoria School in
ar eu trip
Wrexham
nhw yng Nghaerdydd.
are
Felly
on
tybed,
a
ydyn
trip
ni'n
to
medru gweld
Cardiff. So I
Ysgol
wonder if
Victoria.
we can
Ydy
see
Richard yn
Victoria
medru
School.
clywed ni o'r Senedd?
Can Richard hear us in the Senedd?
Bore da, Hugh.
Bore da. Na i stopio rhannu sgrin am funud
I'll
ymyler
stop
mwyn
sharing
gweld
my
chi.
screen for a
Mi fod â
second
chi
so that we can
ymlaen y
see
sgrin
you.
yn fan
We'll
hyn.
bring you onto our screen.
Bore da, Ysgol Victoria. A tybed, os oes gennych chi
Good
fater
morning,
i
Ysgol
gyflwyno
Victoria. I
ar
wonder
gyfer y
if
cyfarfod
you
bore yma.
have a proposal for this morning's meeting.
Does anybody have a proposal that they'd like everybody to vote on? Should phones be banned?
Well, as it happens here, we have been having a little discussion this morning about mobile phones in schools. Does anybody want to come up with a proposal?
David?
David?
No, mobile.
Yeah. Do you think so? David here thinks it's a good idea for no mobile phones in schools.
No mobile phones in schools. Dyma fo, David. Ydy David isio
Here comes
awgrymu
David.
un
Does
egluro?
he want to explain that to us?
No, da ni wedi. Sorry, David?
Should be mobile phone because it could disturb the children's learning.
That's a very good point, David. Thank you very much for making it. Righto, well, we'll go back to the slides now to see if everyone agrees with you. So thank you for that, David. We'll move back to our screens and see what everyone thinks. Okay, so we'll need the Menti back on screen. So remember this time, cofiwch tro 'ma, da chi'n pleidleisio o
So
blaid
this
os ydych
time,
chi'n cytuno
you're
efo David.
voting
Mae David
in
yn dweud
favor if you agree
bod
with David. And
ffonau
David
symudol
said
yn
that
mynd drwy gyfer
mobile
ysgol
phones are a
oherwydd bod
bad
o'n
thing in
tynnu
schools
sylw
because it
rhag dysgu.
distracts
Felly, ydych chi
pupils
o
from their
blaid
learning.
ac yn
So
cytuno gyda
do
David
you
neu yn
agree with
erbyn?
David or disagree?
Felly, os ydych chi'n cytuno gyda
So
David
if
bod
you
ffonau
agree
symudol
with
yn mynd
David
drwy,
that mobile
pleidleisio
phones are a
o
bad
blaid.
thing, vote in
Os ydych
favor
chi yn
or
erbyn,
for. And if you're against,
yn
vote
amlwg,
against.
ydych chi'n gwybod be i wneud erbyn hyn? Dwi'n
I
amau.
think you know what to do now.
60 o ymatebion wedi'n cyrraedd ni.
So we've had 60
O, rwan te.
responses. Now
Mwy yn
then,
anghytuno tro 'ma,
more disagree
ond
this time,
falle bod chi'n
but
anghytuno efo'r defnydd o
perhaps
ffonau symudol o
you
bosib,
disagree with the
falle.
use of
Ond
mobile
ddatganiad
phones.
bod chi'n edrych arno fo fel ni. Felly,
You're
un
looking
diddorol
at
yn
it
fan
in
hyn,
those
a
terms. So
ydy
that's
hyn yn
very
cael ei drafod ar
interesting.
lawr y Senedd ar hyn o
Is
bryd?
this discussed in the Senedd? As it happens, it is. This is a very topical issue. It was discussed just a few weeks ago, I think. And there's been a great deal of discussion around this, and I'm a parent myself, and I have children in secondary school, and I am aware that there are positive impacts in using mobile phones, in keeping in touch with people and doing research, but it can also be very disruptive, particularly in schools. So there's a great deal of discussion on this in the chamber, in the Senedd. And the Sened's been engaging with schools and seeking views as to should this happen and what rules need to be in place. And I think the Children's Commission has been working with the Senedd to look into this. So I'll be very interested to know what everyone's views on this will be. Well, we'll move on now to see if the Senedd members agree with the statement. So over we go to the Cahoot, and let's see what the view is on the issue raised by Victoria CP School. Are you in favour or against?
A dwi'n amau, fel dwi'n dweud, mae yn erbyn y defnydd o
And
ffonau
I
symudol
suspect
lawr y
that
dosbarth mae
people are against
gynulleidfa
the
aelodau
use
Senedd fel petai.
of
Felly, diolch
mobile
yn fawr iawn i
phones
chi
in the
ac Ysgol
classroom.
Victoria fanna.
So thank you to David and
Cyhoeddi'r mater yna. Mae
Victoria
Huw, fel
School
dwi'n dweud,
there,
o lawr y
who brought
Senedd
us
yn
that issue
arbennig iawn.
live
Felly, diolch
from
yn
the
fawr iawn i chi
Senedd.
am
So that was wonderful,
gysylltu
and
efo ni
thank you
ynglyn â
for
trip bore yma. Ond rwan,
engaging with
da
us
ni'n mynd i
whilst you're on
symud
your
ymlaen
trip this morning.